Hey, welcome back to the channel, the big inventory myth in Vancouver real estate. In this week's video, I'm going to give you some feet on the street perspective in terms of, do we actually have all of these listings to sell, as you'll see in headlines, or are we still in a situation where there's not enough inventory for the people that want to purchase? Real quick before we get started, if this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hassan. I'm a real estate agent in the Vancouver area, and I make educational real estate content to help you on your real estate journey. When I'm not making videos like this, I'm helping people just like you buy and sell real estate across the Lower Mainland. So if that sounds interesting to you and you wanted to chat about your real estate situation with me one-on-one, you can book me for a free call in the Calendly link below and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a future video. All right, I hope you had a wonderful week. Let's jump right into this. The big inventory myth, what I'm gonna call it. If you've been following headlines across the Lower Mainland for the past, say, 12 to 18 months, you will have noticed a lot of headlines surrounding this inventory topic, how the amount of homes, the active listings are just piling up and buyers have all this selection and all of this choice. The reality is I'm going to give you a couple of perspectives from a feet on the street perspective and some client scenarios of what's actually truly happening out there, because if you were to rely on the headlines, I think you would believe or see a much different picture than what's actually happening at ground level. To get started, I'm going to throw some stats on the screen here. We're going to look at total inventory. Here you'll see where we sit today. We're not necessarily at record levels. We're at a high point over the last 3 years. And you know, back in, I want to say 5 years ago, we had a bit more of a peak. But if you look at the trend of where our total inventory is going, it looks like it's trending up in that upward direction. Now, at the same time, what's happening that's pretty unique, I would say, in this market is that sales activity, so sales quantity, from a sales quantity perspective, we're down off of the 10-year average by about 27%. So less sales are occurring, more inventory is piling up, there's less transactions happening, and what that means is real estate agents, for many of them, they're not as busy as they might have been in years past. And I'm going to circle back to why that's an important thing when we talk about this whole inventory message. So seeing the charts, seeing the numbers, sales quantity down, more inventory. Is there truly all of this inventory for buyers to choose from? And what we're going to talk about in this video is the amount of dead inventory that exists right across the Lower Mainland. I'm seeing it especially with a lot of single family homes, seeing it with a lot of properties that have development potential. Over the last year or so, the provincial government has enacted several different legislations to basically increase the amount of density that a single family homeowner can have on their single family lot. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that someone who owns a single family home that has owned it for 40, 50 years, perhaps they're well into retirement. That doesn't necessarily mean that they themselves are going to pick up a shovel and, you know, quote unquote, pick up a shovel and build out a fourplex on their lot. But they now have that ability on certain types of properties en masse across the province to be able to build multi-units. And so what happens in these scenarios where, you know, you have a lot of headlines talking about, you know, new zoning, new multiplex development, new transit-oriented development, where if you're within a certain amount of meters from a SkyTrain, you can build to a certain building height. So these are the things we hear, you know, in the news, in the headlines, and they're all true. There's more density that's allowed on these lots. But what it is doing from an inventory perspective, and I'm seeing it on a week-by-week basis, is you end up having a lot more dead inventory on the market. And when I say dead inventory, what I'm referring to are sellers that perhaps have an unrealistic expectation of what their properties are actually worth. And it's not a seller's fault, because ourselves as real estate agents, we too are also figuring out the value of a property now with the new legislations. And as legislation changes, it gets tweaked left and right by different municipalities. The truth is, every single day, at least every single week, the value of your single family property could change. It could change by literally a stroke of a pen at city council. And so we as real estate agents, we are watching this, and then you as a seller or sellers are hearing the headlines and they're thinking, wow, like we can build so much more on this property. That means my property is worth more. And then they're going to go to a real estate agent to get the real estate agent's advice on how to price this property. Now, I want to speak about a specific scenario. I had a client reach out from this channel probably about a month ago. We started chatting. We met to go view a property. This was a single family property on a transit-oriented site within 800 meters of a SkyTrain station. And this story is to just kind of give you an example of what's happening with this inventory out there. So we go, this property is priced at 1.8, and they have set an offer date, meaning that they are expecting to get multiple offers, a bit of an indication that they are hoping to get higher than asking price by setting that offer date. So we go take a look. Long story short, it's a land value property. There wasn't much value in the building at all. I discussed with my client a couple of things that may get in the way of transit-oriented development on this site specifically. So we were chatting back and forth, and maybe lukewarm on the property. Offer presentation comes around, and I think it was about half an hour before the offer presentation, I find out the other agent reaches out and says, we don't have any offers. Do you want to put an offer on the table? So I reach back out to the client. We say, yeah, let's do something. Let's write it at a land value offer, and understanding that, we're not up against other parties, and the home itself barely salvageable, like barely. You'd probably have to take it down sooner rather than later. So we write an offer. We think it's a good offer. Couple hours later, or the following day, we left it open till next day. Following day, the agent reaches out. They don't counter our offer. It was under the asking price. They don't counter the offer. They say, no, we're not into that. Again, they were listed at 1.8. And a few days later, this client texts me and says, hey, if you want a bit of a laugh today, if you need to have a laugh today, go check the price of that property we looked at. And it turns out they raised the price almost $400,000 after only receiving our offer below asking price. They raised almost $400,000, and now that property, that development site, which again, it has some warts on it. There are some things that make it not for a good development site that a homeowner wouldn't know. It's something that you'd have to look into to really look at the lay of the land and understand it. So now they've raised it almost $400,000, and that property is going to sit there on the market. And I bring up this specific example because this is not unique. Perhaps unique is the scenario where we write an offer, we're the only offer, they're going for multiple offers, and then they raise the price. But what I am seeing out there very often, especially for any property where it has multiplex potential, if it has transit-oriented development potential, the reality is when you list a property, that first conversation with a seller very often is helping them understand where their market value may be. I find a lot of times, market value may be here. Seller expectation is usually above that to start. Sometimes seller expectation is based on the BC assessed value, which is not an indication of market value, but it's the only number that a seller really sees. That you yourself, when you open up your mail annually, you take a look, you say, okay, that's a number there that I can associate with my property. So market value here, seller expectation is maybe above that, and then again you throw in terms like multiplex, transit-oriented development. Now all of a sudden the expectation's up here. So you might ask yourself, you might say, okay, well, it's the real estate agent's job, and I truly believe this, it's the real estate agent's job to obviously guide the seller into an asking price that makes sense for the market. It's our job to, number one, help derive, okay, this is what the market value would be. Basically two sets of prices. Market value, this is where we believe it's going to sell at. However, this is where we believe we should list at. You don't always, believe it or not, have to price at market value. There's different types of strategies. So you might wonder in this case, why wasn't there maybe more guidance from the realtor? And I'm not taking a shot at this realtor, but what I'm finding is going on out there, and now I'm going to circle back to sales quantity being, almost 30% off of 10-year averages. So the simple way to look at it is real estate agents on average are doing 30% less deals, let's say. You're always going to find a real estate agent in this market that is going to take on a listing at any price. And I've been in this business now, I've been a real estate agent since 2015-ish. I'm in my 9th year. I'm heading into my 9th year. This is the most that I've ever seen agents taking on dead inventory. So basically properties that are priced way above market value, pie in the sky, thinking someone's going to come around and pay an insane price at some point for that property. I'm seeing way more of those listings. And I was trying to put it together. I was saying, why now? Why is that happening so frequently? And the reality is it's because most agents are doing less deals out there. For myself personally, like I've been fortunate enough that my business has been growing, and this will be my best year in the business, but I know that's not the case for a lot of people out there. And so maybe when your back's up against the wall, some agents out there, they're just going to take it on, even if the seller expectation is very high and they're expecting, for example, in this case, 2.2, it's worth, say $600,000 less than that. There'll always be an agent that's going to take it on. They're thinking, do I want my sign to sit at the sign company's office, or do I want it to sit in someone's yard? And, I've never in my whole career, even when business was slow, when I first started out, I've never been the type to take on a listing with unrealistic expectations if I didn't feel like I could fulfill the client's expectation. I want my clients to love me so much that I want to make sure that at the end of the transaction, they're even more happy with me than the first time they met me, when I'm showing them the glossy brochures and I'm showing them what I do to market their property. I'm showing them how I'm different. I don't want to just make a sale. I want them to be ecstatic at that end of the process. So, I often describe my process as, being the agent that is not necessarily going to tell you what you want to hear. I very often am the agent that's going to tell you what you need to hear. And very often I do lose listings because of this. People will come to me and often through this channel, and they'll say, okay, this is what I have. This is the property. I'll do a realistic assessment of what the value is of the property. Understanding that when we market a property, it's not, we're marketing to get the best possible price, but my conversations with the seller, they have to be authentic. They have to be transparent. There can't be any vagueness, ambiguity. It has to be straight up. And so I'll give a straight up price. Very often sellers will choose to work with me because they know they're going to get that sort of genuine interaction and no BS about me. But I also see listings go to other agents that take it on at that higher price. And then I'll watch that listing either expire, I'll watch it sell later on at a lower price than I said because the market took it downwards. But, this is not to toot my own horn in any way. What I'm trying to say is that there'll always be an agent that's willing to take a chance, that's willing to put a sign in a yard and see if the phone rings. And I feel like in today's market, with sales activity, sales volumes down, I think that's a big factor in why we're seeing all of this dead inventory. And the story I shared with you, again, it's not an anomaly. It's happening all over the place, where now when new listings hit, we are very much having to sift through this sort of dead inventory. And what happens with the dead inventory, and I'll call it unsellable because it's just at insane prices, it's not just in the detached space, it's in condos as well. Some condo sellers, they don't need to sell. So it's, if I get my price, I'll do it. If I don't get my price, I won't. Interest rates, mortgage rates are not at a space yet where, people are very encouraged to make moves that aren't mandatory. I think as rates come down, people will get more excited to make moves, upsizes and things like that. So they'll be a bit more motivated to sell their property. So some of this dead inventory will shrink away. We'll have more market value price inventory as we move forward. But it's sifting through this inventory. And when you take that off, do we really have all of this inventory for buyers to choose from? And I would say no. In some spaces out there, especially detached homes in certain pockets, I'm seeing 25, 30% of the properties they're just overpriced. It's a flag in a yard. It's a flag in the yard hoping that someone's going to come knocking and decide to go for that property. So look, real estate stats are good. I tend to base a lot of what I do and talk about with you guys based on stats, but that's why it's good to have a feet on the street perspective. And I think that's probably why you watch real estate YouTubers here in Vancouver, not just myself, but whoever else you might be watching, because you want to know what's actually going on behind the scenes. And what's happening behind the scenes is not we're not rejoicing, helping buyers thinking we have all of this inventory to choose from. The good stuff is moving very quickly. I have a buyer I'm working with in Yaletown. Yaletown is the most, attractive area of downtown Vancouver, and literally everything we want to write an offer on has an accepted offer on it, because we are only looking at properties that are priced near market value. Yet downtown Vancouver condos, there's so many to choose from. There's so many active listings, but the price points just aren't there. The motivation is just not there. Maybe the motivation to lose a ton of money is just not there either. And people are kind of prolonging that sort of effect. So there you have it, guys. I hope you feel like we cracked the big inventory myth here in Vancouver real estate. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, because what it does is it takes the video and it sends it out to more people so they can also learn from it. And if you enjoy weekly real estate content, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss next week's video. And again, lastly, if you are in the Vancouver area or the Fraser Valley, you want to chat with me about your real estate situation, you can book me for a free call, or you can just send me a text, give me a call, shoot me an email, whatever's easiest for you. I would love to connect with you. But I want to thank you once again for coming to this channel on a weekly basis, and I look forward to seeing you next week.